So what we're going to talk about today is the dashboard, and mostly the control panel and management review. So in a nutshell, with the dashboard, its purposes is to give employees access to their processes, number one. So employees would want to have access to their processes so that they can use them, which is the most important thing. So the control panel here gives the employee access to the processes that have been built for them. It also, this section here, allows managers to review and manage what their employees are doing. So employees access, or users access, their control panels here on this control panel screen. And then if you're a manager, you will see this section, and this allows you to go in and review and manage the work that your employees are doing. The number one reason that you would want to assign control panels to your employees is to get them to use the processes. If there's one complaint that I've heard the most over all the years that TouchStone has been active, it's people aren't using the processes. How do I get my employees to use them? So this functionality that I'm about to show you has been built specifically for that reason, to get the employees to use the processes. Employees will use processes, number one, if they're being trained. So for training purposes, that is one of the best uses of a documented process or procedure, is for training purposes. So that will include new employee training as well as ongoing training and corrective training. So employees would be able to come and use this functionality for training purposes. In addition, they will use the processes if there is something inside of them that needs to be completed, like a checklist or a form. So let's talk about the basic functionality and how all the features work, and then I'm going to get into some tips and techniques for getting employees to use their processes here in the control panel, and then we'll end with management and how managers can use the processes and use management review to review their employees' work. So to assign control panels, it's really easy, and those of you who've been around for a while have seen this before, but I'll just show it here quickly. You'll go to Account Administration, and then here under User Accounts, this is where you assign the control panels. So if we click Me right here, and then you go to Control Panel, which is right above this little question mark icon, you'll then see your organization chart. And to assign a control panel, you simply select the position that you want to give the person a control panel for, and then you hit Save. So I'll add one here to mine just for fun. So let's give me President here and choose Manager, because the President's a managerial position, and hit Update. Now you can see I have two control panels here. And if I go all the way here back to the dashboard, you're going to see the second control panel right here appear. So add your users to the user list, go and assign them a control panel. Also decide what kind of access you want to give them, read, edit, or create, or their administrators. If you want a refresher on all of that, there are short videos in the Resource Center right here that show you how to use Account Administration. People can have multiple control panels, first of all. So this scenario here where I'm the admin finance manager and I'm also the president, that's not too far from the truth for a lot of growing small businesses. So here on the organization chart, if you've built your chart for the future, so you've thought into the future a few years out and decided what is the business going to look like as we grow, and then you build a future chart like this one, it can be common for people to fill multiple boxes on the org chart temporarily until the business has grown to the point where you would fill that position. So if I'm the president here, I might also be the admin finance manager. I might also be the operations manager. I might also be a customer support position. Hopefully not, but sometimes that is the case. So assigning these multiple control panels, like these two, can be helpful when people are trying to compartmentalize and really focus on the different roles that they have. If these different roles are, the work is broken apart, so this is the admin finance manager's work, this is the president's work, then when I go to actually do my work, I can see it broken up. And it allows me to know what I need to focus on as president here and then what I need to focus on in this position. Once a control panel has been assigned, if you select it, like I'm just going to do this one now, you're going to see all of the processes that have been put on this job description. So this is the manager of admin finance position. All these processes here are the same ones that are on the job description for this position. So the control panel is a mere copy of the job description. It just looks a little different here because you've got more functionality to organize and move the processes into groups. So these are the groups here that I have. If I go to the organization chart here, just to drive this point home, and I choose this position, if I add a process to this position, I'm just going to look over at the 4 functions here, choose some random function, click, check it off, hit save. Now I've added that labor and management productivity to this job description. And if we go here back to the dashboard and I choose the control panel for that same position, you're going to see that process appear now here in the control panel. Same is true if you delete a process. So if I was to delete this from the job description, then it's going to be removed from the control panel. If you haven't organized your processes in the control panel, then they're all going to be on the default list like this one is. All the processes that appear in the control panel, if you have them all on the default list, the next step is to get organized with them. So create groups and organize the processes into groups or categories. So you see some examples here. I've got a management group here, and then I've got a finance group, time management, human resources. So think of the categories of work that make sense for this position. So these groups are customizable by position, by user. So when I log in as this position and I organize my processes in the control panel, I do that unique to me, how I want to see them, how I think it's best organized. When someone else logs in, even though they may hold the same position, their work can get organized differently. So if we go here to the dashboard, I'll show you an example of that. So I've got these 2 people here are customer service. They fill the customer service role. And because in this example, that role requires more than one position or person, then I've got 2 people filling it. When John logs in here, he's going to see the same processes on his job description and in his control panel as Jack does. But when he logs in, he can go to that work and organize it into different groups. When Jack logs in, he's going to see the same processes, but his processes can be organized into different types of groups. So this is an example of work all being on the default list still. So 2 positions can have 2 different types of groups. So I'm going to go back here to the manager. Someone's asking a good question. I'm going to answer this because I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. The manager can organize the processes, and the employee can as well. The user can as well. So if we go back here to the dashboard, the question is, can the manager organize the processes, or is the employee the one who organized the processes? The answer is both. So Mary could log in here and organize her own processes into groups, like I'm going to show you here in a second up here. Or I, as her manager, could go to her here in Management Review, and I can go and create groups and organize her processes. So it's both. It's either way. So I'm going to go back here to the dashboard, and then back here to this position. So to create a group, you just click this create group icon, super easy. You put in the name of the group, and then you just hit save. So then the group name appears right here. You can edit the group names just by choosing edit group. Hit the drop down here, choose the group that you want to edit, and then you type in the new name and hit save, and it edits the group name right here. You can also delete groups. Super simple. Click delete group, hit the drop down, choose the group name that you want to delete, and then you hit delete. And then that group name goes away. If there are processes in a group and you delete the group, so if I was to go and delete management, all of these processes here would just get thrown back into the default list. So really easy, create groups, edit groups, delete groups. I think it's good to have group names that are related to subjects. So like management, finance, human resources, time management. You can also make groups that are timing, if that makes sense for the position. So you could create a group and call this morning or like 8 a.m. and then save that. So for some positions, it makes sense to do it more like sections of the day or by time of the day. And then you put the processes in that are done in that time frame. And then also subjects. Those are usually the two types that I would see. Doesn't mean that you can't do something different, but normally it's either going to be timing, like the first of the month, or monthly, quarterly, daily, or morning, afternoon, or literally times of the day. What's more common for most positions would be these subjects. You can also, some work that we all do as employees is rudimentary. So it's kind of the same stuff every day. Then there are other types of work that are on demand or when requested. So the rudimentary work for some positions can be done by timing or days of the month or the week or the year. And you can organize that rudimentary work into a group like this one. And then other work that is on demand or as requested, you could create a group and just simply call it on demand, and then create a group, and that's here, and then move processes that are not done all the time. They're not rudimentary. They're just when it's requested of the person to do it, move them into a group like this. I've also seen group titles that are for, I guess, what I would call resources. So it could be educational things. It could be things that sometimes the employee needs to look at. So you can create a group and call it resources and then put processes that are like that into that particular group. Usually the on-demand stuff and the resource stuff is not stuff that's done all the time, so it can get drugged to the bottom of the control panel. So I'm going to go here to the right just to show you that. I'm going to hit this button that says collapse. So when you have a lot of groups and there's a lot of processes in the control panel, you can collapse it. So now all I'm seeing is the groups here, and then I can drag and drop easier. So I can take this on demand and move it down here. If I had time management stuff, maybe that's not done all the time, or it's done less frequently, so I can move that to the bottom. If I had a resources group, I could move that down to the bottom. Another thing that you can do, and this is a little bit advanced, but I'll tell people who might have a need for this. If you've got this situation where you have 2, 3, 5 people, all customer support or all sales, and you've got some people who, because of their experience or some kind of situation going on in the business, this John say does a few of the human resource or the customer service processes, and Jack doesn't. for whatever reason, sometimes that's the case, you can create a group and call it do not use, and then save that. And then the do not use work, the stuff that one of those people in that position does but the other doesn't, you move that work into it and then drag it all the way to the bottom of the list. So this is a technique that allows you to customize it by person a little bit more, because sometimes there is that situation where someone comes in the morning, someone else comes in the afternoon, they're accountable for the same work, but one does opening and the other doesn't. So remember, you can do this little technique and just move it down at the bottom and say do not use. And when one of them logs in, they'll see this group, and when the other logs in, they won't. All the groups are drag and drop, like you're seeing me do here. I can move these up and move these down. The processes are also drag and drop. So if I open this up here, I can take work from here and move it down into this group and then move it back up. So you can put them in alphabetical order or any kind of order that makes sense. Move this down out of the way for now. So with the control panel, the idea is an employee comes here to be trained or to use their processes. So let's go through a few examples of that. If I'm a manager, which I am, management work is great work to have completed or used in the control panel. Some of you out there have production software, or you have a CRM, or you obviously have accounting software. So there might be tools within those other software sources that you use to do checklists or to make notes, things like that. So in those cases, you don't want to double up on the work, so there's no need to have that in TouchStone when you have it in another system that you use. What TouchStone would hold is the standard operating procedures for how those other software programs are used, and maybe even links to them. For management, there's not generally good management software out there that typically people are using. So TouchStone fills in the gaps with stuff like that really well. So if I'm going to give someone a written warning, for example, I would go here to this employee warnings process, and here I've got checklists. So I would go to this checklist, the warning checklist. I now have a copy of this checklist that I'm looking at now. And the save as is the title of it. So in this example, this would probably be the employee's name, probably makes the most sense. Then in the notes field, this is just available if you need it or not to make notes about what happened when you were completing the checklist or anything that's important you want to make a note about. So this is the employee's name. Then I will go down here and check off these boxes as I do this. When I'm finished, I save it. And now TouchStone's going to date and timestamp it right here. And it has now saved a copy of this completed checklist back to TouchStone. Once it's saved, this little print button appears. And when I select this, it's actually creating that one. I don't have Internet Explorer hooked up to the right section, so that's why I'm getting that error. But normally when you hit this print button, it's going to create a PDF of this checklist, and then you could print it or download it somewhere else or save it. If I go back here, this breadcrumb trail will get me back to the process in the control panel. Once I've saved something like a checklist, if you look all the way to the right here, there's a button that says saved. And when I click that, then here's where that checklist has been saved. If I select it from here, now I'm going back to the checklist. So I could go down and tick boxes again or add more to it. Then when I save it, it's going to re-stamp it and then save what I've added to the checklist back to TouchStone. If the next day rolls around and I've got to give another employee a written warning, I would go back to the checklist right here, and now I've got another copy of this checklist. So this would be the next employee's name, and then same idea, I fill out the checklist boxes and then I save it. It date and time stamps it again. And if I go back here to the process and look again in the saved folder, you're going to see two checklists here now. So the checklist tool is great for quality control. It's great for tracking things. It's good as a reminder of what someone has done and what they haven't done. It's also a great management tool for managers, because if I'm going in and giving people written warnings here and filling out these checklists, then my manager can go in through management review or run a report, which I'm going to show you here in a second, and see those checklists, run a report and see that they were done. Managers need ways of understanding that, or knowing that the work is getting done without having to ask for it, without having to micromanage it. So something like a checklist is a great management tool. So let's go back here. Another example, let's say I'm going to do a performance review. I click this performance review process. Now, I may look at these work plans here just to remind myself of what to do. So once an employee's been trained in something, if it's not rudimentary, it's not something they do every day or even every week, you don't always remember the exact steps to do it. So this is why these work plans are so important here. If you do performance reviews once a year, it's unlikely that you're going to remember every single important step of completing the performance review. So you can go and look at these work plans here. There's probably no need to save this in this example. This is just me referencing it and just reminding myself of what to do. If my manager has told me, you did the performance review and you missed this important step, why don't you go and review the work plan? So that's an example of my manager telling me to retrain myself, go in and remind yourself. And in that case, you might want to just say, have your employees do a note to you, did it, save, and then it date and time stamps it, and this is an instance or a reminder or a notification to the manager that I did what you told me to do. I went back and reviewed this. And this now is saved here in the folder. It's just the idea of it is I'm verifying to you that I restudied this. I have seen in some rudimentary positions, admin positions, dispatchers, telephone positions, where they're using TouchStone as a way of tracking how often something is done. So in that case, I think a checklist could be a good use for that too, but I have seen where the employee is required to go and click the work plan, I did this, save it. And then they go back, the day goes on, I did this again at 2 o'clock, click, and I saved it. So they're basically, for productivity reasons, they're tracking every time they did something. And when the manager goes and looks at the saved area, you're going to see a sequence of times that it was done. So I don't know, this could be, I can think of a cajillion reasons that this would be useful, but just remember, if you have a need like that, completing of work plans just by click, save, gives you this history. Let's talk about scripting in a process. So this process has a script in it, and this is called the response script for performance reviews. So if somebody is doing something on the telephone, they can click the script through the control panel and just kind of have it open in front of them like this. Oftentimes scripts are memorized because people do it so often that it's used for training purposes and maybe not again unless someone needs to be retrained. Another valuable thing to teach your employees is if there's a frequently asked questions script or even a response script like this one, if the manager in this example is doing the performance review and they hear a new question asked by the employee that's not in the script, or it's a customer service position and they hear a customer response that they never heard before, or a customer question, or they answered something in a really great way that worked really well, they can go into the Save As and just say, look at this. This is a note to their manager. And then in the notes field, they can say, put in the new answer, or a new question that they were asked that they didn't know the answer to. So they could type in what it is right here and then save it. And then if a manager is using TouchStone in a good way, they're going to be running reports at least once a week, if not daily, and they're going to see this, look at this. And they may get into the habit of doing that before their department meetings or before their one-on-one meetings. And then they can print off this script, or they can open it up in the meeting and say, Sam came up with this really great question to add to the script, so I'm going to add it. I just want everyone to know about it. So with scripting, training is probably the number one way that it's used here in the control panel, but also for innovation. Uploaded files. So uploaded files, remember, are documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or PDF documents that have been uploaded to TouchStone. So here there are two uploaded files. There's this employee master form and then the manager. If I click an uploaded file in the control panel here, I have to hit View File, and now TouchStone's going to launch whatever software this file had been uploaded in. So this is a Word document, and it's opening right down here at the bottom. It's going to launch Word, and then boom, there's the performance review form. So whatever file has been uploaded, when you click it through the control panel, it's going to launch that software program, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, and then show you the document. So here, if I was filling out a performance review and I wanted it to be in Word for whatever reason, once I completed this document, I could go File, Save As. So now I'm saving the completed document. So you want to save it somewhere on your computer, and then you can close it out from here. And then you go back to Upload Completed File. I select this, and now I'm going to look for that document that I uploaded, and then I hit Open, and now that file gets re-uploaded back to TouchStone. Remember, you want to save it as something. It's probably the employee's name again in this example. You can add notes. So once it's saved, that completed uploaded file has been uploaded back to the control panel. So same as checklist, if I go and look down here in the saved folder, I'm going to see that file. So these are others that were uploaded on other dates, but here's that one file. If I want to go back to this to add more to it, say it's a rolling file or a spreadsheet that I add information to every day or month, not a performance review, but another type of file, a spreadsheet, I could go back to it. I hit View File, I launch it again, I add more and more information to it, I do File Save As and re-upload it. So this starts acting like file storage, where you've got these different forms or files filled out for their unique situation, and you're storing those and saving them all back to TouchStone. If I'm doing another performance review on another day with another employee, I just hit this master form again, hit View File, and then I get a copy of that file again, and then I go and fill it out and save it. So then that's the second employee's performance review. I can also look at the history of the files, just like we did before, clicking the Saved here. And if I wanted to look at last year's performance review for that employee, I could find it here on this report list, choose it, and look at it, remind myself of what happened last year, and then go and complete the new one. I'm showing you viewing things in these saved folders, but it's also easily done by running reports, which we'll cover at the end. If you have an uploaded file and it's a Word document, say, like this employee performance review was, you can go and print that out, have the employee sign it, save it as a PDF, and then upload it just like it was a Word document. So just because this master performance review form is in Word, it doesn't matter. If you've scanned in a completed PDF, you can upload it right here like we did the Word file. So TouchStone doesn't care as long as it's one of these file types. So in that case, you'll have these more uneditable files that you've back uploaded as PDFs. That's a good technique for contracts, any management tools that you don't want in an editable version, like a Word document, you want them saved as a PDF. Anything that has a signature, you can re-upload that in the same way up here into this section. Documents. So here's the document tool. So here in the document tool, it's the same idea as checklists. If you click, like here's the performance review form, and this is not an uploaded file. This is a performance review form similar to that one that I showed you in Word, but it's been put into the document tool instead of being an uploaded file. So here, this fields are all live now, so you can type in and fill out this form, put in the grade down here, fill out all these, fill out these notes fields over here. So these are all, these fields are all live, and then when I save it, it's the same idea, date and time stamps it, and saves a copy of this back to TouchStone. What's better about something being in the document tool like this is that you don't have to deal with the loading and reloading of the file. You can even hit the print button and have a PDF created of what you've completed here, and then re-upload that back to the process, because this is all editable. Once I save this, I could go back to it and change it. It's not like a PDF is where you can't edit or change it. So let's go back here. The custom form tool, this is something that's used quite often in the control panel. These are not kind of editable forms like this one was here in the document tool. These are fixed forms. So the headers can't be changed. Once it's saved back to TouchStone, it acts like a PDF because you can't go back. A manager can't go back and edit it or change it later. So when I click this custom form, then this is what the custom form looks like. So these fields are now, all live to put in, fill them out. You can give a grading just by checking this little checkbox and then writing comments, like this is the Y. So these forms filled out, the same idea, saved back to TouchStone, date and time stamps it. So these custom forms have more of a polished kind of look and feel to them than I think ones that are created in the document tool do. And these are web forms, so they're really meant to be used electronically here in the dashboard. Here's a policy note right here. Usually in the dashboard or in the control panel, this is for management purposes, so the employee would be required just to select it and say, read and agree. Now I have, if I save it, now I've got this kind of instance that the employee has, that I know that they've read and agreed to this policy. So let's go back here and look at a few more examples. Here, this key performance indicators, this is, I think I've got this in a document tool. So if you have processes like this, I think this is stuff that works really well in the control panel. Here's the document, key performance indicators for human resources. I select this, it's giving me a copy of it, and I can go down and now fill this out, like what was the previous period, and then what is the current period. Hopefully and then the progress. So I'm manually filling all this out. You can even do intangible things, previous period, current, progress, and then when I save this, it's going to date and timestamp it and save it back to TouchStone. So now my manager can go and run a report or look at me through management review and actually see these key indicators that I'm supposed to be filling out monthly. You can even do, in addition to having it in the document tool here, this could be built in a custom form, but this is just an example that was in the document tool. But you could also have a custom form for the employee to make notes in. So if I click this, it says Key Performance Indicator Notes for Human Resources. You can type in the date here, are indicators plus or negative from prior month? Yes, no, and then they type in, this is where the Y goes, and then they save it. So it's just this little informational forms so that when the manager goes and looks at the key performance indicator report, then they also have this backup to it, which is the employee's interpretation of it. Why is it that way? What happened? All right, I'm just going to go back here again. So here in the control panel, this is what I've been showing you are just examples of the use of these processes. So they're used for reminding yourself of what to do. They're used for productivity to see how often things are done. They're used to capture information like in forms and custom forms. So when I'm doing the key performance indicators, I'm not like creating some spreadsheet all on my own and then doing a save as and putting it into a folder and then emailing it to my manager. And then they try to look at the prior months and they've got to search emails to try to find it. And they're doing a save as. So this is a way to make it cleaner and not have so many documents going back and forth over email. This is a way, if you build a checklist or a form in something, it's a way to get the employee to focus on the process itself. So if I'm completing a collections, I know that everything related to how I collect money is here in this collections process. I see the work plan here. I'm reminded of the steps of it, even if I don't have to look at it. I'm focused back on it again because I'm completing this checklist that I need to fill out every time I do it. Any script that I need or for this process, if I'm making collection calls, is all right here. Any documents or forms are here. So there's a benefit to having the form or the checklist in the process along with the documentation on how it's used. And again, these are all the thought process behind the control panel and why it can be so useful for getting employees to follow processes. So by having it here, you're focusing and refocusing them on the step-by-step for how it's done. So let's talk about management now. I'm going to go back here. So a manager is going to use management review, this section here, in a couple different ways. One way is for new employee training. The control panel is just amazing for new employee training. It's a way to have a solid, clear, concise training for every employee. The documentation of processes is the training. So the work plans, the checklists, the scripts, the videos, that's the training for the process or for the work. There's no reason to have extra trainings on how the work is done. The process is the training. So what I mean by that is if I click Mary here, and she has a process for cash flow planning, this is the training. There's no additional training needed. Everything she needs to know about how to do that is right here. This is the textbook. Now, every employee, for certain processes, may need to watch someone else do it or practice. Obviously, that's important for a lot of work that you're learning. But the documentation itself is the training. So that makes TouchStone an ideal training tool. So here's a few ideas for new employee training. I think I did this one. So let's go to John here in customer service. So now we're looking at all the work that's on the job description for customer service. If John's a new employee, this is a technique you can use to develop a training. So these are the groups: time management, customer service, admin, resources is an example of like just extra things, and also the public processes. So all I've done is edited the title of these and put in time management training week 1, customer service training week 2, admin training week 3. So I've thought about how long is it going to take to train a new customer service person, and organized the processes into weeks. Now, this might be days for some positions. This might be months for other positions. It might be training month 1, month 2. It just depends on the complexity of the position. So if you look at using management review and constructing it into blocks for new employee training. So the idea here is that John here will learn all the time management things in week 1, these 3 processes. Customer service, he's going to learn these 3 in week 2. So let's go to an example of what that looks like. So this, I'm going to pull this screen over here. This is just another TouchStone account. So this is John, and we've logged in as him. And all he sees here is this customer service control panel, because that's the position he fills. So if you have a new employee starting, set them up as a user, assign them a control panel, decide what level of access they're going to have, get them to log into TouchStone, familiarize themselves with it. It's super easy for a frontline employee like this one, even for managers, but more so for a frontline employee because they don't have to learn the management area. If you look over here, there's no 4 key functions. It's really simplified down. They can go to the org chart right here and see the org chart. Only their position is illuminated. So here, all John needs to know is we've documented the processes here for you to use in TouchStone, and we're going to take you through a week-by-week training. So he's told to go to his control panel here in customer support. The manager, like you saw in the account I just showed you, has organized the training into these really nice, clear weeks. So what John is going to be instructed to do, go to the first process. These have been put in order. Study it, read it, watch the videos, memorize the scripts, familiarize yourself with the forms. So he would go to the first process, daily time logs. He would then look at the work plan here, really easy. This is a step-by-step for how to fill out a time log. Read it, study it, look at the images, okay? When he feels like he understands it, this is a pretty simple process. He can just make a note, done, and then he saves it. So now this is just a note to me as his manager that he's read through this work plan. Then he would go back and practice filling out the daily time log form. He would select it. He knows this is the form. He can refer back to the work plan if he doesn't remember what these fields are. Maybe he practices by filling this out one time and then saves it. So now he's completed this daily time log for on this date and time. Then he goes back. And then this is a really straightforward process. This might take him 1 or 2 hours, but then he goes on to the next one. So here, let's go to this one, customer complaints. This is more of an elaborate one than those 3. So in this one, it's a little bit more information for him to learn. Goes to the work plan, studies it, reads it, puts a note in, done, I read it, I get it, saves it. Maybe you also do some lecturing to him. He listens to someone else do it. He practices a little bit. If there's scripts in it, like this one, he goes to the scripts, memorizes them. Maybe the manager does a role play with him to kind of practice it a little bit, but he feels like he's got it, and hits save, and he's done. So the employee, the new employee, is going through each of these tools systematically, reading them, studying them. It's like a textbook. Go down to the videos down here. So this is a customer service training video. He watches the video and then puts done. So now you've got evidence that he's actually watched this video. He's made a note to you that he did. You could build tests in the process, like this one. After he's studied and gone through each of the tools, he could go to the test here and then take the test. So he's answering, these are like open book questions. So he puts in text right here, goes and checks off things, puts in the why, yes or no, and then when he's done, he saves this. It's date and time stamped. So the idea is slowly over the weeks of training, the employee is going in and completing these and studying them in TouchStone. After the end of each day, or definitely at the end of each week, the manager needs to go in and review it. So I'm going to drag this over again. So now we're looking back at the manager's account. So remember the new employee's down here, and he's been in his own TouchStone account marking things as done and complete. I, as the manager, see him here in management review, and I can go down here to customer service and his name. I see the same weeks, and I know that he's gone in and at least done this in the first day. I can select it. I can go over here to the saved area. I can see that he said he's done with that. I can go here to the saved form. I can see he's filled one out. I could then look at how he filled it out. I'm just going to select this here. I can put in notes about what he did well or didn't do well. So these are training notes to Jack. So I'm filling all this out right here in this notes section. If I feel like he's done a good job with this, I can mark him as complete in this. And then when I save it, it saves the note. And it also creates these little check marks. I can hit this button and it trains everything in the process, or you can do them individually. And now when I go back here, I see these really cool little green check marks right next to this process. So as John is going through and reviewing and going through each of these processes, the manager then comes in behind that person, provides any additional feedback or additional lecture training or whatever the process requires. In the end, I can make training notes and then I mark them as complete. And then hopefully within the whole first week, it starts to look like this, where John is going through each of these processes daily and then over the week. And I've got all these little check marks next to this first week of training. And that is assigned to him and to my manager who might be looking at it, that Jack's been trained in these 3 processes. So this is new employee training. And it really gets employees to use the processes. That's what we started off with, that issue. How do I get employees to use the processes? You can have a fresh, clean slate with new employees because you've got all the documentation. They come in brand new. They're taken through a training like this. They're going to tell their friends and family and anyone who will listen, this is the most amazing training I've ever been through. This company has their act together. I knew exactly what I need to do. It's very clear. It's very focused. In addition, the manager can start to understand how much time it takes to train. And this is something that managers don't think about very often because training is so tribal. It's like, just watch me as I do it. It's very elusive and hard to define when you're just putting someone in front of someone else and saying, just learn as best you can, just watch them. This is way different than that. The manager starts to have more control over how long it takes to train, how effective the training is, how good the employee is, if they're learning it quickly or not. It's just a beautiful thing. In the end, you can also put time and money to all of this. And I could tell you it's going to take us 2 months and $10,000 to hire a new customer service person. That really helps with scaling your business, growing it when you're balancing sales with operations. Knowing what it's going to cost you to add more people really cost you is invaluable information. So let's go back here to the dashboard. So that's new employee training. There's also something called ongoing training. All of you who don't have fully documented processes yet are also dealing with the issue of getting existing employees to use the documentation. With a new employee, if you set it off the right way, then you won't have that problem. But with existing employees, you're trying to get them to use and learn something that they haven't ever had to use before. So I suggest you handle it in a somewhat similar way to new employee training. You say to someone like Jack here, we have these customer service processes. They're not all done yet, but we're slowly doing them over time. In your control panel here on the dashboard, give that person a dashboard just like you would a new employee. These processes here, these two are, and these have training check marks, which they wouldn't if this is an existing employee that's having to look at documentation, because existing employees may already know how to do all of this. But what you're attempting to do is refocus them on the most efficient way to do it, and to, at a minimum, educate them on the fact that a documented process exists and it should be done in a certain way. So you would say the same thing to Jack. This week, I want you to review daily planning. I want you to look at the work plans, go through it. I know you've done this before, but I want you to make notes to me in your control panel that you have gone through this and at least studied it, and then let's talk about it. Or customer complaints. There's a new customer complaint process that we've documented. You've seen a little bit of it here and there, but I just want you to look at it for me and review the scripts, memorize them, make sure that you're doing it that way. Make sure you don't have anything extra to add to it that you think is missing. So just take the processes, maybe even one a week or one a month, and ask your existing employees to study it, to review it, discuss it. So handle it very similarly to new employee training. Enforce it with them. If something has a checklist in it, let's go back here, or a form you want filled out. Let's say I'm the existing employee here, and my manager has said to me, I know you do budgeting all the time, but there's a new budgeting process that we've documented, and I want you to follow it the next time you do budgeting. But before that, why don't you study it and make notes to me and give feedback? So I would go here to budget creation. I would look at the work plans here. I would look at all the files that are in it, just like a new employee would. I'd study it, and you're requiring them to review what's in it. Let's say you've decided that you need a checklist or a form, or you want a checklist or a form inside of a process. So you'd say to the employee, this is the new verbal and written warning process that we've been working on. I know you've done this 1,000 times before, but I really want you to look through the content and then start using the checklist every time you do it. So I would then go to the warning checklist and review it and study it. And the manager would talk to me about why it's important to have these checklists completed, or a form, and then require that the employee use it the next time a verbal and written warning comes up. So what all of this takes for the training of existing employees and the getting them to use it idea is a manager. You've heard me say a lot about the manager needs to, the manager should. The processes are managed by the manager. So the manager is accountable for getting results through other people with processes. If the processes aren't being used, the number one thing to ask yourself is, are they being managed? Am I requiring people to use them? Am I explaining to John here why the reputation monitoring checklist is so important? Am I explaining to Mary why her notes in the custom form under collections are so important? Am I going to them on the next day that it isn't completed and asking them for it? So it's slow over time, one process at a time, implementing it and then requiring that it be used. Before we end here, I just want to show you the reports tool. If you look to the left here, there's a reports icon. There are two types of reports you can run. There's a control panel report and a management report. So the control panel report allows you to run reports of your own things that you've completed in your own control panel. So it has a start date, an end date. You can search the save as. So this is why whatever you save something as can be important, because that's what you can search for here. If you have two control panels, well, I can search each individually if I've been completing things in both. Or you can search just a process tool type. So if you choose a type and hit run report, it's going to be a long report. I didn't do a start date, end date, or anything like that, so it's going to give me a lot of information. But this is what it looks like. Here's the checklist. You've got the title of the process, the title of the checklist, and the date and time it was saved. For managers, the management report becomes a really easy way to verify that employees are doing things. So the manager's job is to make sure the processes are managed. One of the key ways to do that is just to make sure that they're being done or followed. So here, this is a quick and easy way for me to see that. I can do a day of the week, or I can do a whole week. I could do it on a Friday after the week is completed. I can search the save as for something. I can search for a particular user that I'm looking for. Like if I'm training John here, I could search just his name. And then when I hit run report, then I'm going to see all of this. So if you remember, this was John in there doing his training, doing his new employee training. So I can see that he did it. He says he's done with all that. This is assigned to me. I can click this and then go and actually look that he's done it here, or says he's done it. So this is a quick, easy way for you to see that it's being done. So if you've got daily checklists, daily forms that you want employees to fill out, run a report at the end of the day. If you don't see it here, just email them. Where is it? Where is it? It's not going to take very much time before they start doing it naturally because they know that you're looking. If all of this seems so overwhelming for a manager, it's too much time, I can't deal with this, then ask yourself, are you overdoing it? Have you put in too many checklists? Have you done too many forms? Because every tool that you're asking your employees to complete has to have a purpose. It has to have a management reason why it's being done. And if you can't come up with that reason, then maybe it is too much. So really zero in on the things that are essential and useful and helpful to make sure that processes are followed and to make sure that you have quality control. Make sure that you have tools as a manager to know what's being done without having to look at it all the time. All of this together creates a process-dependent business where the processes are used. So this, again, this 7-series session is going to repeat, and everyone is welcome to join in again. I just want to give a plug or a shout out here to our drop-in sessions right here, the weekly drop-in calls. These can be a really great opportunity for you to learn more and also to hear what other people are doing or to get your questions answered. If you have a management team and you like what I've been saying about how to be a good manager and you want to have a training with your management team on how to use TouchStone effectively, me or someone else is more than happy to do that for you for free anytime to really show managers these tools and techniques we've been talking about. I think that can be a useful thing to do because you can get rid of all the yeah buts that you're facing and really give people a solid training. At the end of the day, this makes a manager's job so much easier. And the reason they're saying to you, if they are, I just can't do this, I don't have time, it's just so, is because they're probably overwhelmed. And they have to be shown how it can make them more successful in the end. So same thing for employees. Unless you just have employees that are insubordinate, if they're saying to you, this is too much, I can't do it, it's because they're overwhelmed. So the answer to that is to slowly step through it, take action on one or two things, and then win their acceptance of it over time. So thank you for coming, everybody. I appreciated you being here, and remember to reach out if you need help with anything you're trying to implement or do in TouchStone. Thanks for coming.